Hi there. It's Michelle Bousquet from How Hacks Happen. I used to own a little cottage in the woods, and it was great, but being in the woods, a lot of critters would try to find their way in, like mice, rats, chipmunks, lizards, even the occasional bunny rabbit. This was a really old house, so it would get holes in the foundation and other little crevices, and I had to just keep patching them up. And most importantly, not leaving any food out ever, anywhere, inside the house or outside. Then I rented out the cottage, and my tenants, after a few months, started complaining that the mouse problem was out of control. The mice were not only in the kitchen, where you would expect to find them, but they were in the living room and the bedroom, even the laundry room. So I stopped by to see what was going on. And what I found was that, there were a few new little holes that needed to be patched up. But more than that, the tenants, I found, were in the habit of doing things like they'd eat a big package of crackers or Oreos on the sofa, and then they would just throw the empty package into the corner of the living room and never pick it up. And in the bedroom, they would do things like open up a little packet of Pop-Tarts, which has 2 Pop-Tarts in it. They'd eat one and then stash the other one under the bed and forget about it. And I asked them, when was the last time you picked up the sofa cushions and vacuumed underneath? And they just looked at me like, what? So we had a little talk. And I said, if you're going to leave crumbs and food around the house, the mice are going to come in. I could patch every hole that I find. And in a few weeks or a few months, they'll find their way in another way. Your best defense is to not leave crumbs or food lying around. Well, they moved out a few months later, and it didn't look like they took my advice. I actually had to remove the sofa from the house and burn it. It was that bad. Okay, so what does this have to do with this episode? Well, it's now October, which is Cybersecurity Awareness Month. And this is a good time for all of us to do a little check on our cybersecurity cleanliness, like checking in all little places where there might be some crumbs and dust bunnies gathering up, that little dark corner of the attic or the basement where the mice might be building a nest. And let's give it a good, thorough cleaning before the pests arrive to ruin your house. Let's start with passwords. Now, I've talked about passwords before, and you may already know a lot of this, but let's just do a little refresher. So you've got passwords protecting your phone and your cloud accounts, your banking logins, your email, really everything. Now, if you use your phone for most of your banking and finance stuff, you hopefully have facial ID set up, which is, kind of a password using your face. But for PC logins, you most likely use a password that you type. And as with every year, we get a list of the most common passwords for this year, as gleaned from data breaches and other sources. So let's take a look at what's on there. That's the usual suspects like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and various variations of those numbers. The word password, of course, and QWERTY, the QWERTY, which forms a pattern on a keyboard, very easy to type. And the ever-present password, I love you, which has turned up on many lists over the years. And also, in the top 20, we still have dragon and monkey. And they've been on this list for years, and I'm not sure why. Dragon's been on there since before Game of Thrones, so that's not it. And I guess monkey, people think it's kind of a random animal. I mean, why not platypus? That's like the most random animal on the planet. But anyway, who knows why people are still using these passwords? Hopefully you are not. If you want to look at a full list like this, they're all over the web, including Wikipedia, which collates a list every year. And while reading a list like this can be entertaining and amusing, weak passwords are still a big problem, ones that can even cost a lot of money. For example, a company in the UK called KNP found out the hard way earlier this year when a weak password caused the downfall of the entire enterprise. KNP owned a bunch of trucks and they basically did shipping. And in mid-2023, hackers managed to guess a single KNP employee's weak password. And they used that to get into KNP's network. Then the hackers launched a ransomware attack where they encrypted all KNP's data, including their backups. And they locked out the KNP staff and employees from the system. And then they demanded money to unlock the data. Now, we don't know how much it was. That wasn't reported, but it was probably millions of dollars. And KNP couldn't afford it. And they didn't have any offline backups that they could restore to just tell the hackers to get lost. And they even had cybersecurity insurance just for an occasion such as this. But it wasn't enough. So KNP had no choice but to shut down. This company had been in business for 158 years and was brought to its knees because somebody used a weak password like monkey or dragon or chicken nuggets or something. And more than 500 people lost their jobs because of the shutdown. So here we have multiple crumbs going on. We have a weak password. We have no offline backups. And by that, I mean backups that are not connected to the internet, like an external drive where you back it up and then you unplug it, put it in a drawer. That's an offline backup. And if KNP had had something like that, they could have just restored the system and told the ransomware hackers where to go. But with all these crumbs lying around, the mice came in and they had their way. The keystone of this hack was the weak password. Like, I don't think the hackers knew whether the company had offline backups or not, but they definitely knew about the weak password. So how do hackers take advantage of these weak passwords? Did they just sit there typing in different ones until they hit the jackpot? No, they have bots for that. And in the past few years, they've even got AI to make things go even faster. If you've listened to my earlier episodes, you know how passwords are stored by a website or an app. They don't just store the password as is, they run it through an algorithm that mushes it up and jumbles it around, and it creates a jumble of characters and numbers called a hash. And that hash is what the website or app stores away in a spreadsheet or a table alongside your login. And when you log in, it just hashes what you type in and compares it to what it's got. And if it's the same, you're in. And since only these hashes are stored when you hear about a hack where passwords were stolen, what they've really stolen is a list of hashes. Well, usually, anyway. There have been cases of passwords being stolen that were stored as plain text, but that's pretty rare nowadays. Most companies have gotten hip to using hashing. Also, hashing algorithms are widely known, and anyone can implement one, which means that hackers know the hashing algorithms too. But hashing is a one-way function, and you can't reverse engineer it. So there's no mathematical way to take a hash and figure out what the original password was that was used to make that hash. There are a bunch of accepted hashing algorithms out there, all of them tested very rigorously, and no one has figured out a way to reverse them. And that might seem sort of fantastical, but that's part of the magic of crypto math. But if you can't reverse engineer a list of hashes, even if you know the algorithm, meaning you can't get at the actual passwords, then what use is a list of hashed passwords to a hacker? Oh boy, if only you knew. Well, I shouldn't say that because you're about to know. What hackers do is grab a list of common passwords, then run the hashing algorithms on them, and compare the resulting hashes to the one in the stolen list to find a match. In the old days, and by this I mean like more than 10 years ago, hackers would hash thousands or millions of possible password combinations and put them in a giant spreadsheet or a table, along with each hash alongside the plaintext password. Then they could just search the table for a match. This kind of huge searchable table of password and hash pairs is called a rainbow table. And these kinds of tables have been around since hackers started hacking the web. But one of the problems with rainbow tables is that because they're so huge, it takes a long time to search for a match. Enter AI to the rescue. In 2023, researchers used leaked password lists to develop PassGAN, an AI-powered password cracker. Based on this list of passwords, PassGAN was able to make some guesses as to what certain passwords could be. And what it does is hashes just those passwords on the spot and compares them to a list to crack the password. It's very good at it. This approach isn't really new, and in fact, it's the approach that's been used by password cracking software like Hashcat and John the Ripper. They use things like, what's the subject's pet's name? What year is it? And they try different options based on that. You've never heard of Hashcat or John the Ripper? Well, they're freely available and actually really fun to play with. Both of these tools use more of a guessing approach rather than lookup tables. But when PassGAN was added to the mix with its AI power, it was able to crack even more passwords than Hashcat or John the Ripper. By over 50%. They tested it on 15 million passwords, and it did it in under a minute. But it's worth noting that all these tools really struggle when it comes to longer passwords. Like, all you have to do is make your passwords 18 characters whenever you can. And it's estimated that it will take millions or even billions of years to crack something of that length. So that's one thing you can definitely do to make yourself safer. Make all your passwords 18 characters or more. And if your password is a common word or a name plus a year and an exclamation point, I can pretty much guarantee you that it would take PassGAN about half a second to crack it. You might also start using a password manager like 1Password or NordPass or Keeper. Now, these companies didn't give me any money to mention their names or even free software. This is just my own recommendation. And if you really want to see how bad this can be, you can go to the website Have I Been Pwned, spelled Have I Been PWNED.com, which is a great website for checking whether your password or email has been part of a breach. And it will even tell you how many breaches it appears in. For example, the password Summer 2025 exclamation point has appeared in 395 data breaches. And the fact that the site can even identify the actual password and not the hash, it means that password has been cracked and it's on some lookup list somewhere, a rainbow table. And in particular, please consider having an excellent, really, really good password on your email. You might think, so what if they get in my emails? There's nothing of interest in there. But how hackers use hacked email is for the long game, for fraud. Here's a true story of how that could play out. In March of 2023, Susie and Gary Bierman, a retired couple living in Arizona, they lost $61,000 to scammers. all because their emails had been hacked and they didn't know it. The couple was getting their kitchen renovated, and one of the contractors was asking for payment before they could continue. Now, at the time of this request, the Biermans happened to be out of town, so they couldn't just hand the guy a check. So the contractor said he would send an invoice via email with wire transfer information. So Susie Bierman checks her email, she finds the invoice, and she sends the wire transfer for $61,000. She even got a confirmation email back from the contractor. But then a week later, the contractor was like, "Where's the money?" And after a bunch of confusion, Susie figured out what happened. She had been scammed. So, unbeknownst to her, hackers had hacked into her emails sometime before, weeks, months, who knows how long. And they've been hanging out in there just waiting for an opportunity like this. When they saw the invoice come through, the legitimate one from the contractor with the wire information, they made up their own fake invoice that looked almost exactly like the original, but with different wire transfer information to a different account. And a message like, "Oops, we sent the wrong information before. Wire to this account instead." The money had actually gone to another bank account in the United States, and the owner of that account then put the money into a cryptocurrency account where it disappeared forever. Now, this middleman guy, he had no idea what was going on. He was actually being catfished. He was in a romance scam with his gorgeous online girlfriend, using him as a money mule. And scammers like to use a middleman like this because it would have been super suspicious for the Biermans to get an invoice from their contractor telling them to pay in cryptocurrency. It's crazy, right? There's so many moving parts. There's the hacked email, the fake invoice, the middleman who's being scammed himself. Here we don't just have Pop-Tart crumbs under the bed. We have like a pizza stuffed into the sofa and an entire barbecue left out on the porch. The point is that it wasn't just a compromised email. It was a bunch of stuff. And all of this combined meant that this couple lost $61,000 and will never get it back. A tool you can use to help keep yourself safe from these kinds of scams is multi-factor authentication. This is when you get texted a code that you have to type in, or you have an authenticator app on your phone and you have to look up a number and type it in. And while these methods are a little inconvenient, using them is certainly preferable to getting hacked. If a website or app offers you multi-factor authentication or two-factor authentication, go ahead and take them up on it. But even if you have multi-factor authentication enabled, you still have to stay vigilant. Here's a cautionary tale from just a few weeks ago where multi-factor authentication failed, not because of any technological fault, but because the user didn't use it properly. A Reddit user posted that they were scammed out of $45,000 in their E-Trade account. E-Trade is a platform for buying and selling stocks, one of the more popular ones. In late July of 2025, this user got a notification that a $45,000 transfer had been initiated from their E-Trade account to some outside account. Now, since the user hadn't initiated this transfer, this was a little alarming, but he figured he would just contact their fraud department and get it sorted out. So right when this user was about to contact E-Trade, they got a phone call right from E-Trade's customer service. The number popped up right there in his phone. Now, in order to cancel the transaction, the service rep said they would need to text a code for the user to read back to them. The code showed up a minute or two later on their phone, and the user told it to the rep. Reality, that call was not from E-Trade customer service. The call came from the scammers, and they had spoofed the E-Trade customer service phone number. Spoofing is when you make a phone call seem to come from a particular phone number when it really comes from some other number. And the code that the user read back to the person on the phone That was the two-factor authentication code to confirm the transfer, not cancel it. This user noticed right away and is working on getting their money back, but it's going to be a long process. So an expensive lesson learned. Don't accept a call about fraud because the number might be spoofed. Call the company back on their real number and speak to them about it. So now we have more crumbs going on here. We have, first of all, the trade being initiated, then the phone call. These are two different activities working together to fool the user. And if mice are overrunning the house, it's not because of 3 crumbs left on the kitchen counter. It's because there's something in every room, a little treat, that's going to attract them. And before you know it, they've pooped on your clothes and ruined your furniture. Now that is all for today. So my question is, what are you going to do to make yourself safer during Cybersecurity Awareness Month? How about a little pinky promise to me that you'll go and check your passwords and make sure they're all long enough, at least 15 characters, if not 18, so you can keep them out of the mix. Change the password on your email. Make it long and really crazy. Also, a little promise to yourself that you will inspect and question things like, is that wire transfer information actually correct? Call the company if you're not sure and just double check it. Because if there's any little way to get through a crack in the foundation and start eating the crumbs, the scammers will find it. Another thing you can do to help celebrate Cybersecurity Awareness Month is to tell a friend about this podcast so they can be safer too. And please follow or subscribe on whatever platform you're listening on. It really helps spread the word about what I'm trying to accomplish with this podcast, which is safety for all of us. This is Michelle Bousquet from How Hacks Happen, wishing you the bestest, most safest passwords in all of the universe. Bye-bye.